Thank you all very much for coming. Just a bit of housekeeping out the way. There are no fire alarm tests or anything today, so if the alarm does go off, it's right out the front door where we came in. A couple of people in here are expendable. Mary, for example, can go at the back because she served her purpose already. She's lived her life twice over, so don't worry so much about her. Your phones are all turned off. We are videoing all day, okay, and the video is going to be made available to you. We're going to put it online so you can watch it back and relive all the fun over the next few days. So if it's all right with you, if we save, we'll have a question time just before lunch, just after lunch, and then again at the end of the day. So if you save your questions till then, or if you don't want to ask questions, if you want to write them down and just hand them in, and I'll just make sure I go over it. If you hand us a bit of paper at lunchtime, we can go over anything you want to talk about. We're going to try and cover everything. Obviously, there's an awful lot to try and cover today. So I've got a few PowerPoints that I want to run through with you and certain things. But if I'm missing something that is key to you, do let me know, because we're trying to get 10 years worth of work across to you in sort of 6 hours. So I think I've got all the right stuff that you're going to want to hear. But if not, give us a little bit of direction. Tell us what you want to know about, and we can go into a bit more detail. We've got 3 wonderful people that are going to speak for 10 minutes only today. Mary has changed. Mary, this is the artist formerly known as Mary. She's changed her name to Wombat, which stands for Wily Old Mary.
And thriving, breathing and thriving.
Breathing and thriving.
It always calls me the old woman. Now I'm getting fed up with that.
Thank you. And Claire Rogers from Newquay, who's just overcome emetophobia as well with the programme, and the lovely Layla. Right? She's a tiny bit shy today, so we're going to give her a very big welcome later on. So we've got 3 people, 11 to 113. So the gap is obviously huge, and Claire fits somewhere in the middle. So we're going to get through as much as we possibly can with you. Your phones are off. What else was there? Fire alarm, done that. Good. Okay, well, let's start. A number of you, I think about 25 of you, 24, 25 of you have either had a meto, have still got a meto, or just getting over it as we speak. So about 25 of you have got it, and I think about 10 of you are partners, friends, family. I think one of you's brought your entire family, which is good, thank you. And then there's 8 or 9 of our Thrive consultants here as well. The Thrive consultants are very happy in the coffee breaks and the lunch break to answer any questions that you've got. So they're here for the day, so I'd grab them and make the most of them while they're here. We're going to have a coffee break at 11 o'clock for 20 minutes, half an hour. We've got a lunch break 1 till 2, and then we've got a coffee break again at 3:30. When we ran this in Copenhagen a couple of months back, the difficulty was trying to organise what sort of lunch 20 emetophobes might want. And we were in quite a long discussion with the people that run the place, and they'd never heard of emetophobia, obviously, and the end menu they offered us was basically lettuce. So we said that we'll bring our own lunch, so hopefully you've all brought some lettuce and water, and hopefully the weather's nice and we'll go outside and just wander around or go into the corner of the park or something at lunchtime. I think there's a cafe here as well that does biscuits and tea and coffee and stuff like that, so you should be okay. Any questions before we start rolling? Excellent. If you do have a question as we're going through that you're just bursting to ask, and it's incredibly pertinent, you can ask it and just put your hand up, say you've got a question, and I'll just repeat it so we get it all on film, get it all on the tape. Okay? Everyone happy so far? Anyone not happy? Good. Wonderful. Okay, so welcome. This is the Curia Emetophobia and Thrive. First of all, we're going to talk a little bit about what the Thrive programme is and what is actually thriving. So, a plant or animal is said to be thriving when it's growing, developing and flourishing the very best it can do in that particular environment. Okay? So it's not about being perfect. I'm already off PowerPoint, there you go. First slide and I've gone. I knew there was no point in doing a PowerPoint. One of the biggest problems that a lot of emetophobes have is their perfectionism. And if there's ever a stumbling block to someone getting that last 10% to the cure, if you like. It's almost always their perfectionism in some way, shape or form. So that's something to really watch out for. So thriving is not about being perfect. It's not about being perfect. It's not about not making mistakes. It's not about being fantastic all the time. It's not about being happy all the time. It's not about never having a dislike of being sick. No one likes being sick. Okay, you don't have to love being sick in order to consider yourself cured of emetophobia. I think that's perhaps pushing it a little bit too far. We're going to talk about it a little bit later. So all the way through it, you've got to think that we're not striving for perfection. Someone that is thriving is resilient. Okay, they can deal with any situation. They might have a tough time in a situation. They might have bad days. They might even have bad weeks. But it's about how quickly you bounce back, and it's how quickly you use the skills that you've got in order to bounce back. When a person's thriving, it's because they've got psychological skills, resources, and the right attitude to flourish in every area of their lives. They know how to maintain a physically healthy life and a mentally healthy life and be happy, confident, and successful. Thriving individuals have the self-insight and resources to overcome or avoid developing symptoms such as anxieties, phobias, or depression, and the robustness to fight more serious problems and illnesses. I don't know if any of you have seen the recent video we put of James Reck. Have you seen that? James is a lovely chap. He's about 70, and he recently went through the program to stop smoking and overcome the pain of the death of a loved one. His partner recently died. And he went through the program, stopped smoking, and was able to get on with his life. And then shortly after he finished his Thrive course, was told he had lung cancer himself and had 6 months to live. He's going through chemo now, and they've extended that to a possible 12 months. But if you, I won't tell you any more about him, but if you look on our YouTube channel and watch his video, he's the most thriving person I've met. He's happy, he's calm, he's relaxed, he's positive, he's in control. You wouldn't think there's anything wrong with him at all. That's what thriving is about. It's about being resilient in difficult situations. Oh, here we go. Thriving is not about achieving perfection. I heard that before somewhere. It's about having the resilience to bounce back from adversity. It's being able to face difficulties and setbacks head on, knowing that you have the skills and resources to overcome things, overcome anything that you find in your way. It's about making the most out of your life. Thank you, Fiona. Embracing challenges, learning new things and enjoying yourself. I should have checked the photos. Thank you. It is, thank you for that. We all know people who are thriving. If you think about it for a minute, you think about everyone knows someone who's thriving. Think about someone in your life that you think never gets a cold, or no matter what happens, if they get divorced, if they get ill, if they have problems in their life, they break a leg or something, they always seem to bounce back quickly. They always seem to have a smile on their face. They always seem to think, what's all right, we'll get over it, we'll move on, we can get through this. That's thriving. It doesn't mean to say they don't have bad things happen. It doesn't mean to say they don't have shitty lives at some point. Okay? What it does mean is they've got the skills and resources and the right attitude to move on from it and to get moving again. So what's the Thrive program then? The Thrive program is a unique training program that equips people with the skills, insights and resources they need in order to thrive. That's it in a nutshell. By working through a training manual, of which there are 5 at the moment, either alone at home or with the help of a trained Thrive consultant, anyone can now get themselves thriving, usually in around 6 to 8 weeks. Through a series of simple explanations, exercises and actions, the student is guided through an exciting journey where they begin to grow psychologically stronger and fitter, more resilient every day. The student learns a great deal about applied positive psychology, learns how to recognise and then change any limiting beliefs they hold. They begin to create an internal locus of control, which means they feel a sense of personal power, a power to change their responses to events and experiences in their lives. The student gradually builds a strong sense of self-efficacy and self-belief. They learn how to create high, stable self-esteem, and they learn how to resist social pressures and overcome social anxiety. In short, they learn how to thrive. When you're thriving, you have strong psychological foundations, grounded and congruent belief systems, helpful thinking styles, and a positive attitude towards life. And this is our formula here. So we're talking about what you want to be is somewhere in the middle of the non-Venn diagram. You want to have the right amount of belief. So why is Thrive perhaps different to CBT? other than the fact it's about 8 times more effective, it's because a series of techniques, particularly for someone like an emetophobe, a series of techniques isn't going to cure you of anything, okay? Because you don't have the belief and the understanding about how they're going to work. I saw a lovely little boy at the beginning of this week, where are we? Saturday, beginning of this week, and he's got ME and has had anorexia and has emetophobia. And his mum brought with him a file about that thick from all these psychologists and psychiatrists that you've seen. And the thing that helped him most so far was a scribbled diagram on a bit of paper. And I said, look, I'm really sorry, I apologise on the half of the NHS. There's no way a scribbled diagram is going to help your son overcome anything. It's got absolutely no belief that a scribble on a bit of paper is going to cure anyone of anything, let alone somebody who feels so powerless like that. So you've got to have the belief and the understanding of why it's going to work. Only then will you put in effort. When you think of it, oh, it's just another program, just another intervention. Oh, I've heard about this thing. I saw a video of some mad old woman talking about it. Don't answer that. I think I'll buy the book. I think I'll give it a go. It's not going to work. You're wasting your time, wasting your energy. You can have the book sitting on your shelf for months and months, as did Claire. It's only when she put it into practice did she cure herself in the space of about a month. Okay, and those of you that follow us on Facebook know that I had someone stay at my house a couple of weeks ago who cured herself of emetophobia and a drinking problem in 5 days. Okay, 5 days. From emetophobia and a drinking problem. She was drinking a litre of whiskey a day. I know, as an emetophobe, it's quite remarkable. But here it is. I'm glad there's some significant others here today, because her mum, who used to be a nurse, told her that a single shot of alcohol would kill off any germs in the belly and you wouldn't be sick. Now, you tell that to an obsessive person with a strong desire for control, and soon they start having a shot every time they feel the tiny weeniest bit nauseous. So she was on a litre of whiskey a day and emetophobia. Within 5 days, well, in fact, with 1 day she stopped drinking, but within 5 days, completely over emetophobia, completely over her drinking, and knows that she will never have either of those two things again. In fact, already last night she was able to drink socially and not as a safety-seeking and avoidance behaviour. Now, she did work her backside off for a week. I'm not telling you that to make it sound like it's easy. It's not easy. From the 3 people you're going to hear about today, you're going to hear that it's hard work. You've got to put in a lot of hard work. You can't just read a book and expect to be cured. It's not going to work like that. You need to put in a lot of effort, but if you put in that effort, you will get over it. And she did it in 5 days. So that's beliefs. You've got to have the resources. You've got to know what you've got to change in order to get better. You've got to know what you've got to change in order to be thriving. There's no point just putting in effort. I see a lot of people, I've seen thousands of emetophobes over the years, and often they put in a lot of effort, but not the right effort. It doesn't matter how much effort you're putting in, it doesn't matter if you're working your backside off for 8 hours a day, if it's not the right effort, it's not going to do anything. You've got to be putting in the right effort. You've got to have the right skills and the right resources to tackle the right beliefs and the thinking styles that you've got that are causing the problem. And that's where the effort comes in. When you have the belief, when you absolutely believe, when you can see that if I do this, this and this, I can get over it, then you feel motivated, then you put the effort in. Unless you believe it's going to work, you don't put the effort in. Pregnant women, for example, find it incredibly easy to stop smoking. They stop smoking just like that. They don't tend to have withdrawal symptoms, side effects, or anything like that, because their attitude towards it has changed. They don't think, no, I really should stop smoking. I'd really like to stop. I'm pregnant. I don't want to harm my baby. They say, I'm pregnant. I don't smoke anymore. And when they have that attitude, it's really easy to stop. But if someone goes into it thinking, I should really stop. I'm getting old now, and it's not going to be good for my health, it becomes very, very difficult because you're making it hard for yourself. So when you absolutely believe and understand how and why you will get over this, you have that epiphany, you have that moment where the light bulb shines brightly in your eyes, and then you work really hard, and within a really short space of time, you're over it. Very, very short space. It doesn't take long. You could do it in a day. Okay? I don't advise that you try, because being perfectionist, you're likely to give yourself a hard time if you don't, but you could do it in a day. Lisa did it in a day last week. You could do it in a day, and I'll tell you how later on. You'll understand how later on. But I'd advise you set yourself sort of 5 or 6 weeks. That gives you plenty of time to notice the thinking styles, notice the underlying beliefs, tackle things like the perfectionism and the desire for control and things like that. But you could do it in a day if you really, really wanted to. So you want to be somewhere in the middle of that Venn diagram. You don't want to believe it and have the resources and not put the effort in. Nothing's going to happen. You don't want to put loads of effort in without the belief. You certainly don't want to put loads of effort in without the right skills, because nothing's going to happen. You're only going to make yourself worse, which is kind of how you got here in the first place. We can talk about that a little bit later. So I'm going to be right bang in the middle of that Venn diagram. I want you to think of the program as you're going through it as kind of building a jigsaw puzzle, okay? And each step of the way, each chapter, each little bit of insight you get, each little bit of self-awareness that you get, obviously about yourselves, is another piece in that puzzle. It's only when you've got that entire puzzle completed in front of you that you have all the information that you need. Before you've got that complete puzzle, you haven't got enough information. So I was answering a post on the Emetophobia Facebook page day before yesterday. Someone said, Rob, I see all these people getting better. Why aren't I cured yet? I'm up to chapter 7. And I said, because you're on chapter 7. Yeah? You need to go through the whole program. If you're working through it with the Thrive consultant, that's different, because they're going to take you through it at a slightly different pace and a slightly different way. You need to know everything that's in that book. Okay? If you only know 90% of what's in the book, you're only going to put in 90% effort. Okay, and that means you're going to miss something. Okay, you want to know it inside out. You want to know that absolutely inside out. Okay, when you do, you'll put the right amount of effort in, and you'll be doing the right resources, you'll have the right skills, you'll be doing the right techniques. Until that point, I wouldn't even try, because you're only going to set yourself up to fail, which is, of course, what's happened before with your CBT and your lightning process and whatever else you've done prior to now. So consider yourself building up a gradual picture. Each chapter, each time you learn something new, you're building up until you get to the point where you've got a complete jigsaw puzzle and you know where everything is. At that point, you have all the skills and resources you need, all the insights you need to be able to tackle it, to put the right amount of effort in and to get the right results. Any questions so far? Good. Talk about cognition for a few minutes then, at the first chapter. I want you to imagine that today, every one of you, every one of us, has a set of glasses on. Some, in fact, you do have glasses on. I want you to imagine that all of us have got a set of glasses on, a pair of glasses on, or contact lenses in, okay? And we've got this on all the time. Those of you that are wearing glasses that put them on today, you actually had a pair on before you even put them on. Okay? Every one of us is wearing a pair of glasses the whole time. And these glasses, sometimes they've got a lens in, sometimes they've got 2 or 3 lenses in, sometimes they've got 5 or 6 lenses in. Now, I can't remember the last time I had my eyes tested, but it used to be they'd put on these big metal frames and slot in lots of different lenses, and then suddenly, oh my God, you can see clearly. Everything's all wonderful. I want you to imagine that you've got a pair of those on all the time. Even when you're positive and happy and thriving, you've still got a pair of glasses on. You've got a pair of rose-tinted glasses on, haven't you? You've got a pair of positive glasses on. You're seeing things differently. We're always wearing a pair of glasses that we're filtering what we're witnessing in life. Okay? We're not experiencing life, are we? We're experiencing life through the filters of our belief systems, of our thinking styles, of the way we process experiences, the way we think generally. So all the time you've got a pair of glasses on. And all the time there's glasses. Sometimes they are sludge-tinted glasses. I'm being careful, there's a minor in the room. Sludge-tinted glasses. Got to use that word in school, sludge-tinted. It's going to be difficult for me. It's going to appreciate. Sometimes they're obsessive glasses. Sometimes you keep going back and looking at the same thing. Sometimes they're perfectionist glasses. You might look at it and think, oh my God, that's not right. I've made an error in there somewhere. I've made a mistake in there. Sometimes they're learned helplessness glasses. If you're wearing your learned helplessness glasses and you look at this picture, you might be thinking about the poor little kiddie who's just dancing by the side of the beach. At any minute that person could fall in and get washed away. Okay, you might be looking through your negative glasses. I think that's typical, isn't it? You go to the beach one day and of course there's going to be a shark. So these, don't laugh. So these filters are there all the time. On a good day, when you're thriving and you're in charge of your thinking and you're in charge of your belief systems, then those filters are having a very positive effect. You might see a grey, horrible day on the beach and mud and dog muck everywhere, but you still see a beautiful beach and that life's fantastic and it's a wonderful time and everything's going to be brilliant. But you always wear these glasses. These things are always affecting you. You always have them on. Okay? You need to think about that the whole time. What glasses am I wearing right now? As you're sitting here right now, what are you wearing? What are you thinking about? How are you filtering what's going on in the room? Some of us are thinking the room is quite cold. I've seen a couple of you put your jumpers on, and yet a couple of you are wafting yourself to try and get cooler. Okay, we all experience things differently through the filters of our belief systems, our cognitive styles, and our helpful and unhelpful thinking styles. So, those of you that have only read the Emetophobia book, I've got the Emetophobia book. We haven't introduced this concept into the Emetophobia book yet, but it's in the latest Thrive book that's coming out in a couple of weeks, and it will be in the newer version of the Emetophobia manual that will be coming out in a couple of months. But you won't need that, because of course you'll all be cured by then. Okay? I want you to think of the concept of foundations. So, we're going to start on a slight tangent. So, working through the book now, working through the program. That was an introduction to the Thrive program and what is thriving. What is thriving? What is the Thrive program? This now is working through the actual book itself. So if the Thrive program teaches you how to thrive, then anyone can use it. Why did I create a separate book for Emetophobia? Okay? If the main Thrive program book contains everything you need to know in order to be thriving, why create a separate book for emetophobes? Why are you so special? Well, what we found was emetophobes, because of their general high desire for control and the fact they seem to know their own minds quite well, and I'm picking my words incredibly carefully at the moment because there are lots of sharp things around the room, what they tended to do is get hold of the Emetophobia book, get hold of the Thrive book, skip the first 13 chapters and go right to the end and find out what it is they think they need to do in order to get better. Okay? I didn't know that, I don't need to know that, I don't need to know that, I want to go straight to that. So, if you had to think of a name that described an emetophobe's thinking styles as a kind of all-encompassing name, I would call it a problem-solving personality. Okay? Problem-solving personality. Okay? You're really good at solving problems. Okay? You've got that ability to zoom in on something, got that ability to waft through what you think is important and what you think isn't important and dive straight into what you think is particularly relevant. And that's great when you know what you're doing. Okay? You're not experts yet at overcoming emetophobia, and yet you did seem to think that you were by skipping right the way through my life's work. It's okay though, it's absolutely fine. And going straight to the final chapter, okay? And then sending emails like, why aren't I cured? I've read the last chapter. Okay, so what we did, basically, we turned the normal emetophobia back to front, normal emetophobia book, and reorganised the chapters, obviously added in the emetophobia relevant research and everything else, and made it, I don't want to use the word foolproof, but hopefully made it that you couldn't do it any other way than the way it's laid out in the book. Okay? So that's the main reason why you've got your own special book. There's nothing really different in there, apart from the emphasis on some of your particular thinking styles and beliefs, that you couldn't have done going through the main Thrive book. But of course, we know that the majority of you have tried other treatments before, other therapies before, all this other stuff, and you come to Thrive usually as a last resort, thinking, oh God, I'm going to try something else, I heard about this, and we're going to go. So actually, you don't necessarily give it your fullest attention straight away and work through the program. Also, it's often quite difficult taking someone through a program who already has some idea of what it is they think they're doing. Okay? So those of you that have been to therapists, for example, in the past, or those of you that are Thrive consultants, know that the hardest person to help is someone that already has some prior knowledge. Okay? So what you don't want to do is make the mistake of going, oh yeah, I know about that. We talked about that when I did my CBT. I don't need to know about that. Yeah, we did a little bit of that when I did my family dynamic counselling. I don't need to read chapter 4. Okay? You want to assume, if you haven't started yet, that you know nothing about this. You want to assume that you know nothing and not try and integrate the Thrive understanding and insights and Thrive knowledge with stuff that you already know. You want to see it as something entirely separate. Okay? If you try and integrate it with knowledge that you already have, you're going to get misled a little bit because the jigsaw puzzle won't come together. Because, for example, my explanation of cognition might be different to the one you learned about with your CBT therapist. And the words might have slightly different meanings, which is why you've all got a glossary, by the way, in your handout today. So I'm very, very specific about what these words mean. So the word addiction, for example, means different things to different people. So try not to integrate the Thrive information, the Thrive knowledge, the Thrive research, etc., with stuff you think you already know, because the stuff you think you already know might be flawed. Okay? So don't take that risk. Why take the risk? Assume, it's only 200 odd pages, assume you don't know any of it yet, and read it and study it as an entirely separate thing, and not try and make sense of this. Oh yeah, because that sounds a little bit like, that's kind of a bit like the reframe in NLP, isn't it? That's actually unhelpful, and it's only your desire for control that makes you do that. Normal people don't do that as much as you do. Okay? Normal people don't do that as much as you do. They don't try and relate things to other things, because that's a symptom of desire for control, making sense of everything in relation to other things. Treat it as an entirely separate thing, and you'll get more out of it quickly. Emetophobes tend to have, I apologise about the term emetophobe, by the way, I should be saying a person with emetophobia, but it's just much quicker. Okay? Emetophobes tend to have very strong self-belief. Okay? Because they're black and white thinker, what they do believe, they tend to believe quite strongly and quite vociferously. Emetophobes are particularly good at what I call firefighting. We can look at this in a little bit more detail later on, firefighting. And one of the issues firefighting, you'll remember that you've got a picture of actually the stressometer. We're going to look at that again a little bit later on, but the stressometer, if you imagine the stressometer with a picture of a small fire at the beginning, and that fire getting bigger and bigger as you go round, because of your safety-seeking and avoidance behaviours, which we'll talk about later on, safety-seeking and avoidance behaviours, you are very, very skilled at firefighting. In fact, you're probably the most skilled of all people, and that is something to celebrate if you're a perfectionist, at being a firefighter. That what means you are really good at putting out fires. Okay? You are really skillful at avoiding one thing that, let's be honest, you don't particularly like very much. Okay? You're very skilled at that. You will not meet another part of the community more skilled at avoiding something they don't like. Okay? But you're also sometimes bordering on neurotic about it at the same time, because firefighting is inherently anxiety-provoking. It doesn't matter how good you are at putting out little fires, whether those little fires are just thoughts in your mind, a rumble in your belly, a worry about the fact that every one of you shook Rob's hand this morning. Did he wash his hands before he shook my hands? He did see him coming out the toilet. Okay? Those little unhelpful thoughts are little fires, and you're very skillful about putting those fires out, and that's fantastic, and congratulations for that. However, you create so much anxiety by having firefighting thoughts. And your needle on the stressometer is always in the red, though you probably don't know it. You've probably lived your life with the needle in the red. And what I want you to start thinking about is, instead of thinking continuously all the time, how do I put this fire out? How do I put this fire out? How do I put this fire out? I want to introduce the concept of you asking yourself, how do I stop building fires in the first place? Because that is a much better question to ask. How do I stop creating these things in the first place? Instead of focusing all of my efforts on firefighting and safety seeking and avoidance, think to yourself, what can I do to not build that fire? What can I do to not create that thought? What can I do to not create that anxiety in the first place? It's much, much easier and simpler to stop yourself getting stressed than it is to calm yourself down when you are stressed. It's much easier to stay calm and not get angry than it is to calm yourself down when you're angry. You know what it's like when you're angry. When you're angry, you see red, and what you think at that moment, you believe is absolutely the truth. When you calm down an hour or a day later, oh my God, I can't believe I said that to you. I do apologise. But at that time, it was real. It's much easier never to get angry than it is to calm yourself down from being angry. Okay? Mary, don't speak. Mary, we worked out, during her 75 years as an emetophobe, had 8.2 million catastrophic anxiety-provoking thoughts about being sick Firefighting. Oh my God, did I wash my hands? Oh my God, I can't do that. Oh my God, is that there? I'm going to go and sit down. I'll have my peppermint tea. I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do something else. And it was those thoughts that are actually causing the phobia she had. The very thoughts she was having to firefight her fear, ironically, were the thoughts that were creating her fear. So the moment she stopped having those thoughts, she got better. The moment she stopped having those firefighting, safety-seeking and avoidance thoughts, I just said, hang on a second. Not once in 75 years, not once did she say, do you know what, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it doesn't matter that I shook their hand. Maybe it doesn't matter that I'm feeling a bit nauseous. Maybe if I was sick, I could put up with it. Maybe it's not as bad as I thought it was. Not once in 75 years did she think that. The moment she did, within 8 weeks, 9 weeks, she was over it. So your safety-seeking and avoidance behaviours, or firefighting, is probably 70 to 80% of the reason why you have emetophobia in the first place. The things that you are doing to protect yourself is the very thing that's causing the phobia. And of course, this is why things like exposure therapy doesn't work for emetophobia. Because if you don't change your beliefs and thinking about it, you could go and be sick, it wouldn't make the slightest bit of difference. Could you still process it as terrifying and traumatic? So it's a different book layout, and is fairly unique to emetophobia research within the Emeto book. So to be confident of a predictable and sustainable cure, and we're going to talk about what constitutes a cure later on, you must complete the whole program. You must apply the Thrive formula, and we just talked about this with the other screen there. So in a little bit more detail there, resources refers to people having sufficient insights and skills, I can't read it on my small screen, to achieve their goals. This could include an understanding about how to achieve success, along with possessing any necessary psychological or physical capabilities. Effort refers to people showing determination and putting effort into achieving their goals. It could include taking action, persisting in the face of challenges, utilising any of their insights and skills. And beliefs refer to people having high self-efficacy in relation to achieving their goals, believing that they can achieve it. The more you believe you can achieve it, the more effort you put in. And you don't want to go into it in a lackadaisical, oh, I'll read it, yeah, I'll have a look at it, I'll see how I feel. You're not going to get anywhere with that. And also, if you read it that way, first of all, kind of out of interest and have the book on the floor and occasionally pick it up, by the time you do it properly, you've lost your faith in the book a little bit because it didn't change your life the first time you read it. So now you're going to put less effort in the second time. So wherever you are in it, if you're doing it by yourself, and if you're not putting in 100% effort already, I'd go back to the beginning of the book, start it again, and put in 100% effort. Do not leave any T uncrossed, any I undotted as you're going through that. Do every single one of those exercises. I promise you, you will overcome your emetophobia, and you will thrive if you do that. I cannot promise you if you don't. Cannot promise you if you don't do that. That promise only exists if you do everything within the book the way I've laid it out for you. That's the same thing in a little bit more detail. So what happens if you don't work your way through the program, the full program correctly? You won't get thriving, okay? And another concept I want you to think about before you go any further is when you go through the Thrive program, although you're doing it for emetophobia, I want you to think yourself of going through the Thrive program to thrive. Okay, you're going through the Thrive program to learn how to thrive. You're not going through it to overcome emetophobia. That's inherently negative in itself, and obviously makes you focus more on your emetophobia. Okay? And also, you're setting your sights quite short, aren't you? If you've got a program that will teach you how to thrive, which is up here, why would you aim for overcoming something which is down here? So if you haven't already done so, switch your mindset to, I'm going through this program, I'm teaching myself how to get thriving. Along the way, I'm going to cure myself of a number of unhelpful things like a fear of being sick and perfectionist thinking styles and obsessing and brooding, all sorts of stuff. Okay? So you're going through the program to teach yourself how to thrive, not to overcome emetophobia. You're going through the Thrive program to learn to thrive. If you don't create strong foundations, which we're going to talk about in a minute, you have to work really hard at managing your thinking. You won't create new habits and beliefs. So Lisa who came to stay with me last week, has had the Thrive book for over a year. The Emetophobia book for over a year. She'd even had 6 or 7 sessions with me. She's a friend of mine, by the way. She'd even had 6 or 7 sessions with me sporadically. She'd build up her determination. She'd go away and she'd work really, really hard for 2 weeks, perhaps. Okay? She'd seen massive improvements. For example, about 2 months ago, she stopped drinking for 6 days by herself. She went from having 30 or 40 shots of alcohol a day, all day and all night, to having none all by herself within the space of 3 or 4 days. And then she had 6 days where she didn't drink at all, which was fantastic. Okay? She has 1 shot because she felt she really needed it, completely catastrophizes that 1 shot. Her perfectionist thinking kicks in. She feels so bad, she goes back to drinking 1.5 bottles a day for the next 6 weeks because she feels so bad. She didn't praise at all the fact she didn't drink for 6 days, and she beat herself up completely for the fact she had 1 tiny little drink. That's perfectionist thinking, black and white thinking, catastrophizing. Okay? That makes it very difficult to overcome something when you want to beat yourself up for the slightest thing, but won't praise yourself even when you do something brilliant, which is a big problem for emetophobes. But what she did, she'd had the book for over a year, she'd had various sessions, and she'd try for a couple of weeks, and she'd get a little bit better. She, in fact, overcame the emetophobia. Well, she didn't. She got much better, so she coped with it last year for a few months. But what she didn't do the program well enough, long enough, for it to become a permanent thing. You've got to do it for 5 or 6 weeks. You've got to be absolutely on top of your game for 5 or 6 weeks. You've got to be thriving for 5 or 6 weeks before it becomes habitual. If you don't do it long enough, the moment you stop putting in effort, you're going to go back to the way you were, because it's a temporary thing. This, again, is why things like CBT don't tend to be that effective for something like emetophobia, because very few people deliver it in a way that feels like an established ongoing program that makes sense to you. It tends to be given as a series of techniques, and then you feel a bit better, so you stop doing them. You have to do them long enough that you change fundamentally the way you think, the way you process events and experiences, and your belief systems, particularly your unhelpful belief systems. You've got to do it long enough. So don't just do it till you feel a little bit more alive, but I feel better, I can relax a little bit now. That's the time when you really up your game and put in even more effort. Do it solidly for 5 or 6 weeks until it becomes habitual, then you can relax. If you don't do that, any progress will always be temporary. So the moment Lisa worked really hard for 3 or 4 days, that's it. And I'm getting texts off her every day. She's absolutely flying. She's absolutely thriving. Here's an arrow I made earlier. So if you want to think of not thriving to thriving as a kind of a journey, somewhere along the lines there, I want you to think of all psychological symptoms, anything from personality disorders through to behavioural disorders, depression, anxiety, phobias, fears, things like ME, post-viral fatigue, anorexia, bulimia, self-harming, any disorder that's got any kind of psychological content, okay, isn't something that is happening to you. It's something that you are doing, and is a function of how much or how little you're thriving. So if you think of thriving for the time being as how well you manage your belief systems, how good and powerful and positive and helpful your belief systems are, and how good and powerful and positive your thinking styles are, and the general way that you process experience in life and your general kind of thriving attitude towards life, the worse you do that, the more likely you are to have symptoms, and the worse those symptoms are going to be. Okay? So your psychological symptoms are a symptom of your thinking styles. They're not a symptom of your life, or what's happening in your life, or what's going around you in your life. They are a symptom of your thinking styles and your beliefs. It's that predictable. Okay, it's completely predictable. I said to the mother of this 15-year-old that I mentioned earlier in the week, I said, and of course they're feeling that life is completely unpredictable, and where's all this coming from? Where's all that happening? And I said, you know what, if you'd have brought your son to see me age 10 and told me about his thinking styles, I could have told you that by age 15 he would have either ME, anorexia, or emetophobia. It's predictable. It's not, oh my God, where's this coming from? What a huge shock, what a surprise. It's so unpredictable. It's the most predictable thing on the planet. It's as predictable as if I drop that balloon like that, it's going to hit the floor. Okay, it's that predictable that you have emetophobia. It's not a surprise, it's not a shock. Oh my God, where did that come from? It's utterly, utterly predictable. When you see that, when you see how you've gone from your journey from here to here, it's really easy to get home again. Yeah? If I blindfolded you and dropped you in the middle of Norfolk and said, find your way home, it'd be quite difficult. Okay? And I have thought about it a few times as well. Yeah, I have thought about it. Or further away, Dartmoor. But if you watch your journey, if you see your journey, you go from this point and you see how you've got to this place, it's really easy to find your way back. So I want you to think about it in terms of not thriving. And not thriving means unhelpful belief systems, poor processing skills, unhelpful thinking styles. The worst symptoms to have, the most likely symptoms you're going to have if you're really not thriving, are the symptoms that you've got. Okay? Emetophobia, anorexia, OCD, ME, chronic fatigue, all of those things. Okay? And these are all very, very similar problems and issues. We know there's a comorbidity with things like anorexia, with things like ME, chronic fatigue, OCD type symptoms. They are very, very similar to emetophobia. We'll look at that in a minute. If someone's thriving a little bit more than that, if they haven't got a huge external locus of control, and we know that the vast majority of emetophobes score 25 or 26 on the locus of control quiz, that's really high. That's a really, really external, powerless, fatalistic set of underlying fundamental beliefs. Okay? Of course you're going to develop some chronic anxiety with those kind of beliefs. Of course you are. It's that predictable. However, the further you go up there, if someone's almost thriving, someone's pretty much thriving, got a good insight into themselves, good self-awareness, quite a good basic understanding of psychology, like they know the weather doesn't make them depressed, they know that horoscopes aren't real, they know that ghosts aren't real, they don't believe in that Jesus fella and all that kind of nonsense, right? That was a joke, by the way. Just for the tape, can you laugh? Otherwise I'm going to get sued. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. The most they're going to suffer with is a bit of unhappiness, little bit of depression, and low self-esteem. Okay? Those are symptoms of your beliefs and your thinking styles. They are not a symptom of your reality or your life in any way, shape, or form. We are causing psychological problems in ourselves by the way we think. It has nothing to do with our environment. We're going to talk a little bit more about it later. So you can see that as you aim for thriving, if you just aim to thrive, you're going to overcome these things as you're going along on that journey. Things are going to improve. As an example, the lovely Claire at the end there, who's going to talk to you a little bit later on, we haven't made a big thing about it, but Claire's almost completely blind. Okay? In fact, we didn't even know that, I don't think, when we first heard that she'd overcome her emetophobia. In fact, she'd had the book for 3 months and read it twice, hadn't done anything for her at all. It's only when she had a couple of sessions with Lucy, one of our Thrive consultants, I think she only had 2 sessions, and she cured herself within a month. The moment she started putting effort in. So she went from being an incredibly powerless person who was an almost blind person, didn't travel very far from her house. She came up to our Christmas conference in Cambridge, came all the way from Cornwall, right the way across London, right up to Cambridge, by herself on the train. Okay? That's what a thriving person does. So she didn't just get over her emetophobia and the rest of her life stayed the same. She became powerful in every area of her life because she's thriving. And she's now just finished the training to become a Thrive consultant herself. Okay? Birdie, who there's a video for Birdie on our website, who was chronically depressed, incredibly low self-esteem, had tried to kill herself a couple of times in her life, and got to such a very, very low point that in fact she jumped in front of a lorry on the motorway on the A14, completely smashed in the right-hand side of her body, and had lots of incredibly unhelpful counselling sessions and therapy sessions and all sorts of stuff, and was treated very badly by the staff, the mental staff at the hospital, and I do use that word carefully. And she came to see us. She had 5 sessions, and she is a completely different person. She didn't even need the 6th session. Completely different person. From suicidally depressed to completely thriving in the space of 5 or 6 weeks. She's now signed up. She now plays football for the women's Ipswich women's football team, and she's training to be a firefighter. From suicidally depressed to being a firefighter and playing football for a women's team in the space of 5 weeks. That's what it's like when you get thriving. James went through the Thrive program to stop smoking and Thrive. Although he's dying of cancer, he's completely thriving. It's a different thing. It's not about just having the skills to live with your symptom a little bit. I see all these psychology and psychiatry books. I mean, the best-selling book on OCD is Living with OCD. Oh, my God. Yeah, that's the best book on earth, Living with OCD. I mean, you're screwed. You've got this terrible problem for the rest of your life, but we'll teach you how to cope with it. I mean, it's absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. So you want to set your sights on thriving, not just overcoming emetophobia. Set yourselves on thriving, okay? And everything changes. Everything in your life changes. Not just your symptom, not just the one symptom that you want to do. So the more you're thriving, the less you'll create symptoms, because your symptoms don't come from your environment, they come from the way you think and the way you process things. So emetophobia, like all obsessive symptoms, is difficult to overcome with normal treatments. Do we know why that is? That was a question. Do we know why it's so difficult to treat with normal treatments? Because no one likes being sick. What's that? What's the quiz? QI. It's QI. I'm telling you with Stephen Fry. Thank you. And there's the magic word, isn't it? If you say the magic word or phrase, a big light, the lights go flashing. Boo, 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 boo. Okay, that happens. I'll let you off that first time. Okay, but the next time somebody says, because no one likes being sick, Mary is going to come round and throw a glass of water over you. But you are right. Yes. Any other reasons? Okay? It's because it's complicated. You're complicated. Okay? Here's one I prepared earlier. So, I'll show you this. My film still? Show you here. Okay, if you think about this. So, if you imagine that there are approximately 25 component parts in the main Thrive book. Okay, you can read them all up there, can't you? Okay, there you go. 25 component parts. All here, little bricks. So if we wanted to create depression, for example, just a mild depression, we'd need 3 of these bricks. That's all. 3 of these components, 3 of these psychological components to create depression. We'd need low self-esteem, brooding, and an external locus of control. That's depression. Simple. Okay? If we wanted to create a general anxiety, we'd need 4 bricks, perhaps. We need a little bit of black and white thinking in there as well. That's what anxiety is. It's 4 bricks. It's 4 component parts of all the psychological things you could have, of the beliefs you could have, and the unhelpful thinking styles one could have. You only need 4 of those to have anxiety. To have a real big phobia, you probably need 5. You'd need a strong desire for control as well. To have a sexual problem, a stutter, a stammer, or Tourette's, you need another one as well. You need Cou's law. Okay, without Cou's law, you can't have those symptoms. Adding Cou's law, you can have any one of those symptoms. Okay, so most psychological symptoms require only 5 of those potential 25 components. With ME, post-viral fatigue, chronic fatigue, anorexia, emetophobia, it's all 25. Yeah? It's every single one of them. You employ every single one of those unhelpful thinking styles to a greater or lesser extent. Okay? You've got the biggest external locus of control that anyone that ever completes a locus of control quiz. Okay? Very, very, very few people score more than 25 or 26 on a locus of control quiz, and emetophobes always score 25, 26 on a locus of control quiz. Okay? And there's this very, very strong link there, okay? You have all the unhelpful thinking styles because you score 25 on a locus of control quiz. That's why you have them. And what happens as your locus of control score comes down, your thinking styles calm down. I don't know, any of you that are almost there yet or already through the program, when you get to talk, and of course Mary is incredibly happy to talk, okay? If you've got an hour of your life that you want to spare, Mary will happily chat with you in the coffee break. And so is Claire, very happy to talk, and I imagine any of the other TCs will talk. They will tell you that as their locus of control score came down, quite miraculously, their self-esteem went up. And as their self-esteem went up, and their locus control score came down, their social anxiety came down. And then they realised they weren't quite so obsessive, and they weren't quite so black and white, and they weren't quite so compulsive. And their learned helplessness seems to be disappearing. So the thinking styles are a function of your externality. Yes, you copied half of them off your parents, and those parents that are in the room today should be very ashamed of yourselves. But then, to be fair, you probably copied it off your parents, so we'll let you off, okay? So it's every one of these things. It's complicated. It's a complicated thing to help in normal therapies, okay? Because in normal treatments, because there is so much that you've got to change if you go about it in a normal way. You can't just go to CBT and try and improve your self-esteem. Okay, that's not enough. You're not going to get over emetophobia by doing that. You might feel a bit better. You might go and do a weekend course in public speaking or something and improve your social anxiety. But unless you're going to tackle your perfectionism, your black and white thinking, and everything else, it's not going to work. The reason why Thrive works predictably is because you tackle everything in one go. The only times emetophobes sometimes come a little bit unstuck, as did Mary. Mary only had one proper session with me. It's just about perfectionism. That's all. The one thing, if you're going to get stuck on one thing, it's perfectionism. But that one brick is enough to stop you from thriving. You might do everything. Sometimes I get emails around the world, going, Rob, I'm doing the whole thing. I'm doing the whole book. I'm doing everything in the book, but I'm not thriving yet. And I say, I'm really sorry. I know you probably think that you are doing everything, but there will just be probably one thing you're missing. Oh, there isn't. I'm doing it all. I said, just bear with me. Almost certainly there's something that you're missing. Let's just identify the thing that's missing. And you can almost always assume that it's something to do with perfectionism that's being missed. Okay? So one of those 25 things, if you're not working on it, either directly or indirectly, could well prevent you from thriving, could well prevent you overcoming your emetophobia. So you might work really, really hard on a number of key areas and not get better because you're missing out on something that's absolutely key. Okay? Now, I argued with Mary about it. Mary said, but I'm not a perfectionist, Rob. I said, you've got to be. You will be. I know you don't think you are, and I know you don't recognise it yet, but I would just take my word for it for now. It will be perfectionism. We start to have a little argument about it, and then she had a light bulb moment. Okay, let's be honest. It's not that easy for her these days. She had a light bulb moment. I said, oh my God, you're absolutely right. I don't even remember this. Probably. And she said, oh my God, you're absolutely right. I was making a cup of tea this morning, and I scrunched the tea bag up and spilt a bit of tea, and I immediately thought something like, oh, Mary, you stupid old woman. That's perfectionism. She didn't even know she was doing it, and she was doing it all the time. Now, it doesn't matter how much effort you are putting in to build your self-esteem. It doesn't matter how many positives you're giving yourself and how well you're processing your experience of life. If you are calling yourself a bloody idiot 10 times a day, you're not going to get better. Simple as that. You're not going to do it. It's going to be impossible. Okay? So you need to understand all of the different things that are influencing you, all the different things that you are doing to influence yourself, should I say, that are contributing to the overall picture of how you've created this phobia and why you're not thriving. You need to get all of it, because even by missing out on one or two key small areas, you could prevent yourself from thriving. That's why you need to know the book, the program, and yourself inside out to be absolutely assured. You could take the risk and know at 80%, but why take the risk? You don't want to do that. You want to nail it first time. You want to put maximum effort in and look hard and fast at yourself and understand all of the dynamics, everything that you're doing. Excuse me, any questions about that? Good.
Do we have a copy?
No, but it'll be on the video and we'll put something in download, Hayley. So you want to set your sights, to cover this, you want to set your sights on thriving. Think about thriving. Forget emetophobia. Okay? Those of you that had sessions with me know that we don't even talk about it. Why would we talk about it? It's not about overcoming emetophobia. It's about thriving. So once we've ascertained, if you were to come to see a Thrive consultant for help, you might talk about it at initial consultation just to ascertain that you're the right person to do this, and then you'll probably never talk about it again. the emetophobia discussion will probably never be had, possibly at the very end, if you want a little bit of help focusing on a certain set of beliefs or something, you might do. But it may well never come up during the programme. It's not a programme for you to overcome emetophobia. It's a programme to teach you to thrive. That needs to be your focus. Focusing on your symptoms, thinking about your symptoms, makes them worse. Okay? It never makes a symptom better to think about it. I know you could all recite for me what Lamborski and Tatch said in 2004. Who wants to do it? You want to know that, okay? So in the unhelpful thinking styles chapter, in the obsessive chapter, there are 3 small paragraphs from Lamborski and Tatch 2004. Can I suggest that you write them out and stick them on your fridge or by the side of your bed, because you want to understand that, you want to know that inside out. And every time you want to brood about something, read that and you'll stop brooding. Okay? Lamborski and Tatch 2004. Trying to overcome something is inherently negative. Focus your energy on what you do want to be thriving rather than what you don't want to have emetophobia. So, I want to get over this thing is inherently negative. I want to be doing this thing is inherently positive. And that'll help you focus and get the right mindset. So why aren't you thriving? Why isn't someone thriving? Why isn't one thriving at any particular time? So I started to say a few minutes ago. I wanted to get the concept now, it isn't in the books that you've got, but I wanted to get the concept of foundations. Okay? So, I could see that from my hotel room this morning. So, I was at a book meeting recently, and I saw the Shard for the first time. When I saw the Shard for the first time, packed tightly in amongst all those other buildings, I thought to myself, God, the foundations for that building must be so deep, because there's no space for it. They must go down like hundreds of feet, and they've probably got some new, fantastic titanium core, sunken well foundations or something for that building. Otherwise, the moment the weather turns slightly inclement, it's going to fall over, isn't it, or blow down or something like that. So the foundations for that building must be so strong, and that got me thinking about the idea of foundations. So if you think that the first 3 or 4 chapters in your book, whether you've got the Emeto book or the main Thrive book, we can call those first 3 or 4 chapters as being about your foundations. So locus of control and self-esteem are your psychological foundations. Okay, if you're a building, your foundations, the thing that you are built on as a building, are your locus of control and your self-esteem. Those 2 things together are your foundations. If your locus of control is internal and strong and your self-esteem is high, you will be thriving. Okay? And you won't have unhelpful thinking styles and you won't have unhelpful beliefs. Because the unhelpful beliefs and the limiting beliefs and the unhelpful thinking styles come from the fact that you don't have strong foundations. If you don't have strong foundations, everything's frightening in life. Everything's scary. People upset you. People embarrass you. People put you on the spot. You have social anxiety. You worry about everything if your foundations aren't strong. If your foundations are strong and deep, you can put up with anything, so you don't worry about anything. You don't create anxiety about anything. You believe you can tolerate anything that happens in your life. So anything that happens in your life, it's like walking over a little molehill. If you score 25 on a locus of control scale, lots of things in your life feel like you're climbing Everest. But it's not really Everest, it's a molehill. It's because you feel small to this thing. So your foundations are your locus of control and your self-esteem. That's why locus of control is so important. In the next version of the Thrive book and the later version of the Emetophobia book, we're making it even simpler, even more simple, should I say. So we're changing the phrasing of locus of control to space, okay? Which is your sense of power and control over your experiences. It's the same thing. They mean the same thing, but it's a better way of describing it. Because no matter how many times one says locus of control to yourself, it doesn't evoke the right image or picture in your mind of what it is. So for locus of control from now on, just think of it, it's in your glossary, as your sense of power and control over your experiences. That's what locus of control is. Your sense of power and control over your experiences in your life. If you think that life is happening to you, life is going to be pretty tough for you. Okay, and you're going to have quite limiting beliefs, and you're going to have really unhelpful thinking styles. If you think that you're happening to life, that's an entirely different concept. Okay? So if you imagine the first 3-4 chapters of your book are about the foundations, and then this whole second part of the book is about mindset and thinking styles and that kind of stuff, you want to be focusing 2/3 on your foundation, 1/3 on everything else. 2/3 foundations, 1/3 everything else. Now go back to what I said earlier about, generally speaking, emetophobes reading the old Basic Thrive book. They would spend 90% on trying to manage their thinking. CBT, of course, is entirely about managing your thinking, isn't it? It's focused on changing thinking styles and coping strategies, this kind of stuff. The difficulty is, unless you address the fundamental underlying beliefs, unless you change your foundations, you'd have to be managing your thinking for the rest of your life. And that's why it's hard work. Yeah, you can overcome emetophobia by managing your thinking well, but you've got to manage 1,000 thoughts, 10,000 thoughts a day, every day for the rest of your life. That's what it's like to be firefighting and being mindful and managing your thinking. However, if your foundations are strong and deep, you don't have those thoughts. Cara and I, when talking to James Reck, the guy that's got cancer, James, we were talking as we went to take him out for a coffee a couple of weeks ago, talking about what happens about the negative thoughts. We're talking about, I wonder if James does the dream technique for his negative thoughts. All right, he's thriving, but he's dying of cancer. He must still have lots of negative thoughts. How does he tackle those? And I said to her, do you know what? I bet he doesn't even get them. And when we said to him, James, what do you do about the negative thoughts? Do you use the dream technique? He had a little bit of a smile on his face, and he said, I don't really create negative thoughts. And the guy's dying of cancer. He doesn't create negative thoughts because he's got strong foundations. He doesn't feel that everything in life is frightening and terrifying and sad and anxiety-provoking because he feels powerful. He feels powerful dealing with what life challenges there are ahead of him. In a nutshell, if I had to say what the difference between the Thrive program and just about any other treatment is, it's about that. You are creating different foundations. You are fundamentally changing the way you think and the way you believe things and the way you process experiences in your life. Okay? So throughout your childhood, up until, say, the age of 9 or 10, when your personality was generally regarded as formed and your attitude towards life and your locus of control, thinking styles, behaviours, attitudes, most people, even most psychologists, don't think that can be changed. Well, that's not true. It's quite easy to change. It takes you 5 or 6 weeks, hard effort. And that's what you're changing. You're changing your attitudes and your beliefs about life that were created during the forming years, during the first 10 years of your life. So it actually doesn't matter what happened in the first 10 years of your life. And we're going to talk about that shortly. So those are your foundations, and they require 2/3 of your effort. There's no point doing a little bit of that and spending a little bit of time on the locus of control quiz and playing with that a little bit, and then focusing on managing your thinking. That's just firefighting. That's no good to you. You can spend the rest of your life doing that. That's no good. Okay? Mary doesn't get traumatic thoughts about being sick and has to fight them. They don't have these thoughts. Claire, when she talks to us, doesn't have thoughts about being sick. It's not that they have these thoughts still, but they're better at dealing with it. They don't have the thoughts because the thoughts never actually came from being sick. It's not about being sick anyway. The thoughts do not come to them. They are not creating the thoughts anymore. You are creating the thoughts and then having to deal with them. When your foundations are strong, you just don't create the thoughts in the first place. If you don't make your foundations strong, you will spend the rest of your life battling these thoughts. I mean, you can do it that way, but there are easier things to do. So the first part of the book then is your foundations. The second part of the book then is, let's call it just a mindset, having a Thrive mindset. So the thinking styles, cognitive processing, different types of beliefs is about your general mindset. So we talk about limiting beliefs. We talk about different types of cognitive skills that we want to have. Self-insight. Self-awareness is hugely important in getting yourself thriving. Because if you don't recognise you're doing something that's unhelpful, it's quite difficult to change it. So you want to be able to take a good, hard look at yourself and understand the way you think and the the sort of person you are and your attitude towards life and change it. And that can be hard work, you know. Sometimes it doesn't feel easy to take a good hard look at yourself. Psychological knowledge. A big part of the Thrive program, probably 30% of it, is about gaining some honest, genuine psychological knowledge. A lot of people think they've got a lot of psychological knowledge, okay, but the way you interpret that knowledge, in inverted commas, has a profound effect upon you. So if you score 25 on the locus of control quiz, and one of those 25 is the fact that occasionally you might read your horoscope even though you don't necessarily believe it, although that might seem like a really small thing, it is 1/25 of why you're not thriving. So if you want to keep that, if you want to still read your horoscope occasionally, that's fine, that's okay. But the cost is, that's 1/25 of why you've got emetophobia and are not thriving. Yeah, if you want to believe in those other things, if you want to score externally on anything, that's absolutely fine, okay? But realise that is your choice, and each one of those points is probably 1/25 of the reason why you created emetophobia in the first place. So do you want it that badly? Okay? And when you think about it, if it helps, particularly something like the horoscope question, if it helps, think that that horoscope that you're reading, that you're trying to get some meaning out of, or even trying to just to hope. People say, you know, I don't really believe it, Rob. I know I don't believe it, but yeah, it's nice, isn't it? You might read that, you know, you're going to meet an old school friend today and it's going to be lovely. Okay? And that's kind of a nice thing, but it's completely external. Okay? It cannot be more external than reading a horoscope. And if it helps, just remember that it's written by a bearded man that lives alone at home with his mum and 16 cats and he's probably never had sex, and it's based entirely on the time of day your mum and dad had sex a long time ago and the current position of the planet, not millions of miles away, hundreds of millions of miles away. From that, this bearded man who lives alone at home with his mum and 16 cats deduces that you're going to meet an old school friend today, it's going to be a lovely day. Really? Okay? And you need to think that every time you feel an impulse to read your horoscope in a magazine. Okay? Or if you want to carry on reading it anyway, then that's fine. But remember, that is 1/25 of why you have the problem in the first place. If you want to keep that one, fine. You only really need to get your score down to about 5. If you score 5 on the locus of control quiz, you do not have emetophobia. You cannot have emetophobia with a score of 5 on the locus of control quiz. To be honest, you couldn't have emetophobia with a score of 10 on the locus of control quiz in our book. It'd be impossible. It'd be gone by that point. We'll look at that in a little bit more detail later on. So that's the kind of thinking you want to apply to those locus of control quiz questions. That is the most important quiz in the book. That locus of control quiz is twice as important as all the other quizzes put together, because it forms such a fundamental part of your foundations. It's your attitude towards life and your sense of power and control over things. Unless you change your sense of power and control over your life, how could you overcome emetophobia? How could you get thriving if you still felt completely powerless and you still felt that life is something that's happening to you? Okay? You are allowed, the idea is, I say it loud, the idea is to get your score down to about 5 or lower. Those of you that have seen Ree's video, so Ree recently overcame emetophobia with this by herself, and she scored 0 on the locus of control quiz. And I said, really? She said, yeah. I said, well, let's have a Skype session. Let's talk it through. It's a kind of celebration for you. I ran through the entire quiz with her. She genuinely scored 0 on the locus of control quiz. I couldn't not find fault, but I couldn't find any one of those points that she still scored as externally. That's why she's completely thriving. Completely thriving. Jenny, have you seen Jenny's diary? You all want to watch these videos I'm mentioning. You ought to go on the Thrive Program website or the emetophobia.co.uk website and watch all of these videos. These are all of real people like you that have just recently overcome emetophobia with this program, and watch their kind of stories about how they did it and what they did, because that'll help you to understand. Every single one of them says they worked hard. They understood the program, they worked hard. And different thinking styles. So there's a shard. So if you want to imagine then that little grey area under the building, this is our shard, by the way, this is how close we could get to drawing is not our strongest skill set. That little grey bit, that's the really shallow foundations for this building, as you can see, okay? It's a little bit wibbly-wobbly there, okay? But this one with the really deep, strong foundations, even in bad weather, as signified by the squiggly lines, the building is tall and strong. That's what you want to think about. You want to think about yourself having strong foundations, okay? The gust of wind that might affect you is someone saying something to you, is someone shaking your hand, is you having a sore stomach, is you having a thought about being sick, is someone taking the mickey out of you, someone being cruel to you, anything at all, any negative thought, anyone doing anything to you that would normally feel uncomfortable or stressful or anxiety provoking for you, that's the weather affecting your building. You want to be to the point where none of these things affect you. Most of the things that you think affect you, for example, like social anxiety, isn't real anyway. Social anxiety doesn't actually exist. It's not real. It's only ever a projection of what you're thinking about you. It's not real. There's no real feeling that flows through the air. No matter what you might read in The Secret, it doesn't actually exist. That was a dig. Okay? So your psychological foundations are like the foundations of a building. Strong foundations are an internal locus of control and high self-esteem. When you feel strong, powerful and resourceful, you don't create anxiety, stress and fear. When you feel strong, powerful and resourceful, you just don't create anxiety, stress and fear. As your foundations become stronger, your unhelpful thinking styles automatically reduce. Lisa, who lived with me last week, unluckily for her, or ironically for her, was sick on the Monday at my house. The day she stopped drinking, she was sick. So she was sick 2 or 3 times, and I then took her flying in a microlight and tried to make it as uncomfortable as possible for her, as a little bit of a challenge, okay? As a piece of cake for her. 10 minutes after being sick, on day 1 of a 5-day boot camp, she could fly in a real bumpy aeroplane, doing all kinds of ridiculous manoeuvres, and feel completely in control about it. Jenny who did the video diary, that's a really good video diary to watch on the website, okay? Halfway through her program, climbed this huge mountain in Thailand as a challenge to overcome. She's always been frightened of climbing, always been frightened of heights. She wasn't even through the program at this point, but she was setting herself challenges to overcome. One of the things Lucy made poor old Claire do, when Claire was a bit of a perfectionist, she said to Claire, what you've got to do, and I'm not going into your talk, am I here?
No.
What you've got to do, every time you send an email for the next 2 weeks, you've got to make a spelling mistake on purpose to challenge your perfectionism. You've also got to wear odd socks. And it was really uncomfortable, but she did it, and she overcame her perfectionism. That's how you do it. You kind of challenge these things, you expose yourself to it. So the thriving mindset is about having powerful, helpful beliefs. Helpful beliefs. Beliefs that are going to help you achieve what you want to achieve, which is thriving. Good cognitive skills. Good self-insight. You've got to have good self-awareness. Certain psychological knowledge of genuine, real psychology, not pop psychology, not the sort of rubbish that you hear about on telly, but real psychology. What is actually real? How do these things really work? Helpful thinking styles, and then having the right attitude, having a good attitude towards it. I've already said that, but I'm going to keep reiterating it. Thriving is not about being perfect. You need to know, how high are you aiming? Are you aiming for perfection, or are you aiming to be good enough? You want to be good enough. You only need to be good enough to be thriving. Okay? You don't even need 9 out of 10. 8 out of 10 would do. 8 out of 10 is enough to get you completely thriving. Okay? Perfectionism is just someone running away from feeling bad, thank you, Fee, running away from feeling bad, okay, and a fear of failure. It's a fear of failure. It's a fear of being judged, which isn't even real in the first place. Okay, none of these things are real, but they're driving some of you. So thriving's not about being perfect. We've done that already, haven't we? So, in terms of locus of control, and let's now call it space, because it's an easy way of understanding it, it's about your sense of power and control over your experiences. Over the experiences you go through in life, it's about the sense you have. Remember, it's not real again, it's still only a belief. Locus of control is about beliefs, it's not about reality. It's not about whether ghosts exist or not, it's about whether you believe they exist or not. It's not about whether God exists or not, it's about whether you believe it or not. The reality in that respect is irrelevant. It's about what you believe and your attitude towards it. Okay? So things like a good question in the locus of control quiz, well, they're all good statements actually, but the one, I believe that I would do well at any school or college or university that I went to. Okay? That's obviously testing you on whether you think you need good teachers or good tutors or a good environment to work in. Someone, I think probably most of you, I don't know if you remember, most of you agreed with that statement. Most of you said, yeah, I would do well at any school or university or institution I went to. Is that right? Anyone didn't agree with that question? Most of you would agree with that, okay? And the reason why most of you had agreed with that is because you're not afraid of hard work, okay? The only 5 internal answers you had on that locus of control quiz were all the hard work questions, okay? You are not afraid of hard work, effort, diligence, all of these things. You're fastidious in relation to those things. So the 5 or 6 questions that you scored internally on the locus of control quiz were all about you putting in effort and hard work. Okay, if you look back at your books, if you've got them with you and see those ones, you'll find that, okay? So it's a really good question. And what it's doing, a locus of control quiz is a little bit like an MOT on a car. I mean, the moment you drive the car out of the workshop, the MOT is kind of void now, isn't it? What it said was at the time of testing, it was all right. So locus of control quiz is testing you at that moment in your life, testing you on the beliefs that you have. And those beliefs that you have at that moment in your life are entirely based on your experiences in life to date, or rather, the way you've processed those experiences in life to date, okay? So those of you that have already been to university or school and worked really hard, and did well because you worked hard, are going to agree with that statement in the quiz. Okay? Because that's your experience so far. But equally, you may not have ever been to university, but you're not afraid of hard work, and you can demonstrate that. Like, for example, you may have built up a business from scratch. You may have built up a coffee shop from scratch, and knowing that you've done that informs your answer to that statement. Well, I've never been to university, but I know I worked really hard on building the coffee shop. I reckon if I wanted a degree, I could go to university. I could do that, yeah. Yeah. So that belief is informed by experience in your life to date. Does that make sense? So the question, the statement rather, I believe I could run a marathon or climb Mount Everest. Again, you will look back at your experiences in life because they inform that belief you have now. And even if you haven't run a marathon or climbed Everest, but you answered yes to that question, which about 2/3 of you would have done, agreed with that statement, and if you saw one of the Thrive consultants, we'd quiz you on it. Not that we doubted you, but what we want you to do is evidence how you can believe that. And if I said to you, Fee, how could you don't run, do you? No, you never climbed Everest. No, how could you say that? How could you look me straight in the face and say that so confidently? And what she might say is, well, do you know what, Rob? I learned tennis when I was at school 30 years ago. I was rubbish when I started, but I had loads of lessons. I got fit and I got really good at it. In fact, I won the school championship. And based on that knowledge from 30 years ago, when she overcame a physical hurdle then, she can extrapolate that and think, do you know what, if I really want to, I could run a marathon now, because I've already proved to myself I can overcome physical hurdles. Yeah? So our life experiences today inform all of those things. Does that make sense? Okay? Your life experiences to date, generally speaking, are about feeling powerless. Yeah? And running away. Emetophobia is about running away. 90% of your thoughts are about running away from something. All day long, running away, running away. How can I avoid this? How can I get away from this? How can I prevent this? So it's understandable how, even if you didn't have an external locus of control when you first caused yourself to have emetophobia, even if you didn't have that one at that moment, within a couple of weeks you would have one, because you're thinking powerless thoughts all day long. They say we have 60,000 thoughts a day, okay, and probably 1 in every 5 or 6 of your thoughts are related to emetophobia in some way, shape or form, yeah? That's 10,000 thoughts a day. 10,000 powerless, frightening thoughts a day. Now, when I said earlier you could get over it in a day if you wanted to, what do you think would happen if you have 10,000 powerless, catastrophic black and white thoughts today about being sick, but however we did it, say through taking a pill, tomorrow you woke up and you had none of those thoughts. They didn't happen. You'd be over it. And within a few days, your locus of control would become much more internal. And within days, in fact hours, your self-esteem would start to skyrocket because you wouldn't be putting yourself down all the time. And don't forget, you are putting yourself down, because every time you have a powerless thought about anything, That's you putting yourself down. That's what a powerless thought is. I can't do this. I can't control this. I'm not good enough. I've got this phobia. I've got this fear. So you're putting yourself down 10,000 times a day. That's why the self-esteem is always low for emetophobes. Even though most emetophobes are lovely ladies and occasionally men. Not so lovely men, but definitely the ladies are always lovely. Okay? The self-esteem is always really low because you spend all day putting yourself down, although you don't know it. And yet you're very, very skilled, driven, motivated, successful people on the whole in your lives. And as students, you're very successful. But you're putting yourself down 10,000 times a day. Now, I got quite good self-esteem. But what do you think would happen if, just as an exercise for you, and I'll do this for you, as an exercise, just 10 times a day, I'm going to say to myself, Rob, you're a bloody idiot. How long do you think it would take before that started to affect me? Just 10 times a day. Not very long. You're having 10,000 thoughts a day that are contributing to this state that you've got yourself into. Okay? So if you stopped those thoughts, bang, tonight when you went to bed and didn't have them tomorrow morning, you'd be over it by tomorrow night. Okay? Now, you don't want to do it that way because it'd be unpredictable, wouldn't it? You want to know how you've done it. That's why you don't want a quick miracle cure. That's why you want to do it over 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks. Because you want to see every step of the journey how you've achieved it, because that builds your confidence. The last thing you want to be is over it but not know why, because that's even more scary. Because what if it comes back? You need to know that you've got the skills and resources that even if you did recreate it a little bit because you're having an off day or an off week or you've got something going on for yourself, it's no bother. I know what would happen. If I had a bad day at work and I was really tired and there was a bug going around and I started to worry a little bit, I know what I've got to do. I've just got to do this and that, and it won't bother me at all. Having that knowledge means you never have the problem. Having the skills to put out that huge fire, should you create it, means you never worry about it. Does that make sense? So this is the locus of control quiz, the sense of power and control quiz is the most important thing in the whole book, okay? And when you look at it and you go through it again and again and again, you really want to work very, very hard at that. Very, very hard at it. And you want to evidence in your mind, or be able to evidence, all of the changes that you make within those beliefs, okay? And what I mean by that is, I think I may have put this in the PowerPoint. Okay. And what I mean by that is, if you were to say, do you know what, Rob? Let's say I'm doing a session with Elizabeth. It is Elizabeth, isn't it? Okay. As I'm saying, I do a session with Elizabeth, and Elizabeth used to believe in ghosts, although there isn't particularly a ghost question in the quiz. And she said, do you know what, Rob? I've thought about it and thought about it. I don't believe in ghosts anymore. I said, okay. How could she evidence that to me? Because that seems a little bit flimsy, doesn't it? Little bit flimsy, you know. 1 week she did, now she doesn't. What's happened to change that belief? Because actually, she may have been just that side of the fence before, and now she's just this side of the fence. And actually what she wants is not flimsy beliefs, okay? You need really strong beliefs. You don't need a flimsy belief that you've been creating this emetophobia and you're now over it and you're going to be thriving. You need a really strong belief for that. And that belief stems from your experience in kind of overcoming it and getting yourself to the point where you're thriving, okay? But you need strong beliefs, not whimsical beliefs. So I might say to Elizabeth, okay, well, what would happen? You say you don't believe in ghosts anymore, that's great. What would happen then if the ghost of Elvis walked through that wall now? Okay? And if I asked that to a client in a normal session, what would happen? If someone said, you know, I've thought about it, Rob, I don't believe in ghosts anymore. Okay. So what would happen if the ghost of Elvis then walks through that wall now, and we can both see him, and he talks to us, and he says, I won't do the accent, he says, I was in the area, and I heard you talking about ghosts, and I thought I'd just pop in and say, look, we're real, we're here, so-and-so. How do you feel now, Elizabeth? The client would normally say, well, obviously, ghosts are real, aren't they? I made a mistake. So that's a very flimsy belief, because the person that really doesn't believe in ghosts, that can't be a ghost. Yeah? If you don't believe in ghosts, and ghosts don't exist, then that can't be a ghost, can it? I know if we all saw it, we're all seeing something, but it can't be a ghost because ghosts don't exist. So instead of just acquiescing immediately and going, oh, do you know, I got it wrong, clearly ghosts exist, here's Elvis, what am I going to do? Someone with a strong belief change and someone with a high sense of internal self-efficacy and high internal locus will say, well, if it's not Elvis, which it, let's be fair, probably isn't, what else could it be? Well, it could be something in the water that Liz and I are both drinking today. There's something in the water, something in the air in this place, okay? Maybe it's a joke, maybe it's a trick, maybe one of you's had a word with the cameraman and this is a big trick to make Rob believe in ghosts and it's all caught on film, it's all a great laugh. Maybe the ex-wife has finally found out where I live and is trying to get me, okay? It's possible, okay? That's one thing. Maybe it is the air in here. There's air conditioning on and maybe there's a funny smell. This is a scientific kind of institute. Maybe there's something going on. There's a whole load of reasons. There's about 50 reasons why we might all in this room think we're seeing the ghost of Elvis rather than actually being the ghost of Elvis. It's actually statistically more likely that every single one of us in this room is an undiagnosed paranoid schizophrenic. That's more likely. Yeah, because there are loads of them. That's still more likely than we're actually seeing the genuine ghost of Elvis. Yeah, because if you think about it, there are lots of people that think they've seen ghosts, right? Lots of people, half the population believe in ghosts, right? Okay, but you've never met a group of 50 people that all thought they saw one, have you? You're unlikely to ever meet 2 people that believe they saw the same ghost, because that's kind of not how it works if you think about it. Yeah? So it's actually far more, there are a whole load of reasons why that's not the ghost of Elvis. But if you're external, you lean towards external explanations for things. That's what it means. The real basic format. That is your leaning. Okay? Anybody that scores more than 17, I lie because I'm on film, so I got a bit right. About 90% of people that score more than 17 on the locus of control quiz also agree to the statement, I believe homeopathy and reflexology are viable alternatives to modern medicine. 90% of people that score more than 17 on the quiz say yes and agree to that statement. And when you ask them, invariably they say, why did you say yes to that? Invariably they say, I don't know why, I've never tried either, but it's just the sort of thing I like. That's what locus of control means. You are interested in external magical treatments. External magical things. You have a bend, you have a leaning towards external magical things. Okay? But you don't know that you do, although you probably do now. You didn't know that you do, okay? And you need to know how to change that, which we'll come to in just a minute. So, it took me bloody hours, sorry Layla, to do this. Okay, so, you either believe that life is happening to you, okay? And it took me hours, so I'm just going to leave the slide up for a little bit longer, okay? You either believe that life is happening to you, okay, or that you are happening to life, okay? And it's one or the other. You either have an internal locus, you either have an internal sense of power and control, and because I knew Layla was coming out, I tried to pick the unscariest looking ghost I could find. That's how sweet I am, okay? So you either believe that things are happening to you, okay, or you don't. And if they're not happening to you, you feel big and powerful. If you think these things are happening to you, you feel small and powerless. And that is it in a nutshell. Okay? That's money in the top right-hand corner, by the way. Just above the spider. That's supposed to be £10 million. And that guy in the bottom left is walking under a ladder. That's the best I could do for that. So you either believe these things are happening to you, or you believe they're not. And if they're not, then you are happening to them. Okay? You are in power, you are in control of those things. They are not happening to you. Okay? So this is a fundamental. You have to change these thoughts and beliefs if you want to get thriving. You will not get thriving and maintain those beliefs. Okay? All right, you're allowed 5 of them. If you get your locus of control down to 5, if there's 5 that you really want to keep, that's entirely up to you. If there's 5, and 5 does allow you to account for a strong religious belief. Okay, so let's say you're practicing Catholic, you can maintain all of the beliefs around that and still be thriving. and still overcome your emetophobia, okay? But if you want to maintain all of your Catholic beliefs, you can't have any others, okay? There is always a cost involved. Any one of those statements that you agree to that's external, or disagree to that's external, you are paying for that. Every day of your life, you are paying for that belief. Now, you might want it, but if you realise how much it's affecting you, I would really suggest you think twice about it. You really want to maintain those external beliefs at great personal effort if you want them. They've got to really, really mean something to you. You've got to want to keep those for a really bloody good reason if you're going to. Okay? You don't want to keep them just out of some whimsical reason. You will not get thriving if you score over 10 on the locus control quest. It will not happen. Don't try and get there by other means. It will not happen. Okay? You could probably get over emetophobia with a score of, if you get your score realistically down to 13 or 14, but it requires so much effort on a day-by-day basis to manage your thinking, because you'd still be firefighting, because with a score of 13 or 14, you're still creating lots of anxiety-provoking thoughts. So you're going to have to put loads of effort firefighting. You don't get the impression that these two ladies here are sitting there now firefighting difficult thoughts, do you? Sometimes when I look at Mary, I'm not sure there's anything going on, if I'm completely honest. Yeah. But you don't get that impression, do you, that there's a lot of negative thoughts or anything very much at all going on there a lot of the time. Just one more sound at my picture for me just for a second. Oh, thank you, Kate. Appreciate it. So, a couple of things we want to get. Emetophobia isn't something that is happening to you. Okay? I know it's felt like that for a long time, okay, but that's because you're external, particularly in that area. Don't forget, even if you scored 25 on the locus control quiz, that still means there was 5 that you scored very internally on, and those that you scored internally on, you were very powerful in. Yeah, because you're not afraid of hard work and effort. Okay, so it's only 25, it's only 5/6. So emetophobia isn't something that is happening to you, though it often feels like it is. Okay, for those of you in the room that don't have emetophobia, okay, it's a little bit like social anxiety. When you embarrass yourself in front of loads of people and you feel this wave of whatever these people are doing staring at you because you cocked up your PowerPoint, it isn't real, it doesn't exist. It's not actually real. There's nothing there in the air, in the ether at all. Okay? It's a projection of what you think, and that's exactly what emetophobia is. I've never met a person yet that genuinely had a fear of being sick. And certainly none of you have it. Okay? What you have is a fear of being out of control, particularly a fear of being emotionally out of control. As my friend originally pointed out, no one likes being sick. Even bulimic people don't like being sick. It's not fun. It's not nice. It's not interesting. Okay? It's like needing a big poo after a night on the town. Okay? It's not pleasant. It's not fun. Okay? But actually, not many people build it up. I've been a therapist for nearly 30 years. I've had one person in 30 years consult me for coprophobia, which is a fear of having a poo. One person in 30 years. You don't see people going around with a fear of pooing. Do you? Never see it. How many women have a fear of periods? That's awful, that's horrible. Never. How many women have consulted therapists over the years for a fear of periods? None. How many women have consulted therapists over the years for a fear of childbirth? None. You're not going to experience anything worse than childbirth. Why don't you create a phobia out of that? Because it's nothing to do with the reality whatsoever. It's to do with your thinking styles and your beliefs you had when you were a little girl. So you created it. It didn't happen to you. 40% of emetophobes have never been sick. Another 30% don't even remember the last time they were sick. Everyone in this room, every adult in this room, everyone under the age of 30 in this room, should I say, has probably had some sort of ding in a car at some point in their life. Maybe not a big crash. Hands up if you've had some kind of ding in your car at some point in your life. Hands right up, okay? Oh, crikey. Shit, you emetophobes are awful. You'd think with your desire for control, you'd be slightly better drivers. Put your hands up again. All of those people that have had some kind of right up, don't be shy, right up, okay? Keep your hand, that's 20 people. Keep your hand up if you have a fear of driving. It's always 2. Okay? So only 10% of people that have had a car crash have a fear of driving. It's not about the thing. Most of you that had the car crash or ding were driving the next day. Okay? There are just as many Irish people with a fear of snakes as anyone else. There's no snakes in Ireland. Okay? So it doesn't come from being bitten by a snake. Okay? There's 12 million people in the UK with a fear of flying. None of them have ever been in a plane crash. Okay? It's not about the reality. It's about your thinking styles and about how much anxiety you create over something, how much anticipation you create over something. Okay? This is something you've done to yourself. What you've done is you've taken a small, unpleasant, annoying thing like a hangover. I know a lot of you perhaps won't have had one, right? Okay? There are positive side effects to having emetophobia, right? The avoidance of a hangover is an amazing thing to have achieved, okay? So a hangover is an annoying thing, okay? It's a small, annoying thing that's unpleasant and one could really do without it, okay? But nobody makes it so big all right, that it ruins their life, okay? Nobody makes it so big that that ruins their life. You've taken something that's small, about that big, okay, and you've made it that big. It's only that big, really, okay? It's that big. You've made it that big. Because every time you thought about that, you thought about it in a powerless, catastrophic, black and white way, okay? And every time you thought about it and then brooded about it, each day of your life, you made it a millimetre bigger. Okay, bigger, 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 until it was that big. And of course, because you're external about it and you think it's happening to you, it feels like this huge thing is happening to you all the time. But of course, it's not. You're creating it every time. It's only really that big. You've made it that big. When you know how you've made it that big, you can shrink it back down to that big. And that's what you're going to do. Yeah? You're going to calm down all the thinking styles that you've used to amplify it and magnify it and make it that big. So you've taken a small annoying thing that nobody really likes and turned it into a huge monster. Do not laugh at this. It took Charlotte hours. Oh, there it is. Okay, so here is a small, annoying, yappy little dog. Okay? And if you've got an internal locus and you've got good thinking styles, you're going to think, oh, what a lovely little dog. Okay? If you feel a bit powerless, you might think, oh my God, what if it bites me? What if it growls at me? And before you know it, you've turned into a slightly bigger, slightly scarier dog. Please look at the sharp teeth. Okay? And then if you really tear the backside out of it and dwell on it for weeks on end, suddenly it's this huge thing. But the reality of it is, it's a little pooch. Okay? You've turned a little pooch into the Hound of the Baskervilles. Okay? But you don't know that because when you see the little pooch, you see this huge, terrifying hound. That's what you see. Okay? But that's not real. Your experience of it is real. Okay? So how you feel is obviously real. I'm not saying your feelings and your experience isn't real. Your feeling is real, but it's not based on any reality. You've not created it because it's genuinely this threatening, terrifying thing. Okay? And even a dog that big isn't necessarily a genuinely terrifying thing. Those people that haven't got a fear of dogs, generally speaking, would pet any dog of any size. Yeah? Because of your beliefs and thinking styles, every time you have thought, worried or stressed over being sick, you've made the fear bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's 10,000 thoughts a day. Okay? Maybe that's too many. Let's say it's 1,000. That's still a lot of thoughts. Let's be honest, okay? If we agreed that if I called myself a bloody idiot 10 times a day, sooner or later it would affect me. If I said to myself, Rob, you're putting on weight, you're really getting fat, no one's going to love you if you're fat. If I thought that 10 times a day, it's going to affect me. Okay, that's 10 times a day. We all believe self-fulfilling prophecy, don't we? Yeah, we all believe that. We know it's proven, it's psychological. Okay. Let's not say 10,000. Let's say just 1,000 times a day. Okay, 1 in 60 of your thoughts. You know it's much higher than that. But let's say it's not. Let's say it's only 1 in 60. That's 1,000 catastrophic, frightening, powerless thoughts a day that you are having. Okay? It'd be easy to turn a little pooch into the mound of the Hound of the Baskervilles in a couple of days doing that. You're magnifying it with every single thought. Now, of course, you don't know you're doing it. All you know is, You know, Rob, I woke up one day and I had this huge fear of being sick. But that's because you didn't see yourself making it bigger. But just because you didn't see yourself making it bigger didn't mean you didn't do it. In the same way as Elvis isn't really going to walk into the room. Yeah? Just because you didn't see yourself doing it, just because you don't realise you're having somewhere between 1 and 10,000 catastrophic powerless thoughts a day, the moment you recognise that you've done that, it's easy to see how you've created this monster. And all you need to do is stop having those thoughts. No, it sounds easy when I say it like that. That's all you need to do, just stop having those thoughts and you'll be cured. Okay? So you need to understand why you've generated those thoughts, why they're not real, how you've done it, why you've done it. So, this is our triad, okay? So you want to think about locus of control, or space as we're going to start to call it, self-esteem and social anxiety. Each of these three things interact with each other and affect each other. So your social anxiety, for example, okay, affects your self-esteem and is affected by your self-esteem. It affects your locus of control and is affected by your locus of control. Your locus of control affects your social anxiety and your self-esteem and is affected by both. You get the gist. I see this as like one of those balance boards you get at a gym. I know what you're thinking, Rob. You don't go to the gym. I know. I have seen the balance board, though. It's like one of those things, okay? Whatever movement affects the total movement of the whole thing. So if your self-esteem were to, for whatever reason, go up today, if your self-esteem were to go up today, your social anxiety would come down today, the same proportion that your self-esteem went up. Because social anxiety, for the main part, particularly for emetophobes, is a projection of self-esteem. Okay? It's the things that you don't like about you, you worry that other people will see in you. The things that you like about you, you don't really care what other people think about you. Even if what they think about you is derogatory, if you really like it, you don't really care very much about it. Okay? That's all social anxiety is. It's projection of the things that you don't like about you or the things that you worry about you. So as your self-esteem goes up and you like yourself more and there's less that you dislike and less that you worry about, there's less that you worry about what other people think. So as your self-esteem rises, your social anxiety goes down. And as your self-esteem rises and you feel better about yourself, and don't forget the self-esteem really is only what you currently think about you. That's all it is. What you currently think about you. It's not based on anything else. It's no more than a couple of weeks old, if that. It's entirely based on what you currently think about you. Your locus of control score is going to come down. If your self-esteem goes up, your locus of control score is going to come down because your locus of control and your self-esteem are directly related. And in fact, if you think about it, the sorts of thoughts that would create an internal locus are very similar to the sorts of thoughts that would create a sense of self-esteem. I did really well in preparing my PowerPoint for today's presentation is both an internal locus-provoking thought, isn't it? And a self-esteem thought. So it's making me feel good about something that I've done, and it's making me realise I'm good at organising, well, rather wrongly in fact, PowerPoint presentations. So there's two strokes there for the price of one. My internal locus gets praised and provoked in a good way, and so does my self-esteem. So if the self-esteem were to go down today, your boyfriend, your girlfriend phones up and says, you know what, I've thought about it, I don't love you anymore, it's over, which would be harsh, and your self-esteem suddenly goes down, your social anxiety is going to zoom up, and your locus of control is going to become more external, because your life has just become quite unpredictable. Your boyfriend just dumped you. Of course it's unpredictable, you weren't expecting it. So everything changes if one of those things change. And this is why, if you just were to focus on your social anxiety or you were just to focus on your self-esteem alone, that's not enough. Because you cannot have high self-esteem and an external locus of control. The external locus would drag your self-esteem back down. Always. The locus of control is the strongest thing of all. Okay? So even if you had a lot of social anxiety and next weekend you're going on a Toastmaster convention where you're going to be taught to do public speaking, and you're going to create all these skills about how to do public speaking and to talk to people and not feel on the spot and not feel embarrassed, and you're really, really good at it, but you scored 25 on the locus of control quiz, within a few weeks of doing that course, your self-esteem is going to go back up again, okay? Because your social anxiety is going to go back up again, because your social anxiety is created by your locus of control. And if your locus of control is external, you are going to have high social anxiety. So each one of these three things feeds off each other. On the positive side of that, improve any one of them and there'll be a beneficial effect on the other two. Makes sense, doesn't it? Okay? So improve your self-esteem and there'll be a knock-on effect on the social anxiety and the locus of control. Improve your locus of control and there'll be a knock-on effect. The key is to do all three at the same time. You don't want to improve one and not the other two, because the other two could drag that one back down. Okay? So you want to improve, and going through the program, as you know, we do focus on all three of those things. Okay? There are exercises and actions for you to manage, recover, work on all three of those things. Okay? So if you work on locus of control, and you do the self-esteem exercises, and you do the social anxiety exercises, you're going to improve all three of those things at the same sustainable rate. And then there's no one part of it that then could drag the other two back down again. Everyone happy with that so far? Okay, shall we call that coffee? Yeah? We've only got a day, so I'll leave up to half an hour for you, but if you want to make it 20 minutes, yeah, make it 20 minutes, okay? The coffee's downstairs by the toilets. See you shortly.